Perfect. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it, and thanks to everybody who's joining us today, and a big thank you to KTL Solutions for having us. And as Tim just mentioned, just quick agenda. I'm just going to give you a real quick overview of KwikTag and a little bit of background on our company. We'll jump right into the demo, and then I'm sure we'll have plenty of time for those questions and answers. But we're an established leader. We've been doing this for a very long time, and founded in 1997, headquartered here in Tempe, Arizona. This is actually our building in the upper right-hand corner, and the reason I point that out is the folks at KTL know that customers get a lot of value out of the fact that all of our employees are located right here in this building on the 8th floor, so we don't outsource anything or offshore anything. Customers can reach right out to me if for some reason support's not getting back to them right away, or they've got a very highly critical issue, and I can walk right across the hall and make sure that their needs are getting met. We've been awarded 8 United States patents, and you'll notice that one of them is actually the fact that we invented the ability to embed into GP as a capture solution back in 2004. The other 7 patents revolve around what we call our different capture methods. When I say capture methods, I'm referring to the ways that we have to get images into the system, not necessarily just images, but videos, pictures from your iPhone, CAD files, pretty much any type of media that you can possibly imagine, and tie those into your GP transactions or anything else that you might be wanting to digitize. We have about 300,000 plus users worldwide now. It's across a customer base of about 750. And very proud of the fact that we've got a greater than 96% support renewal rate. And I think this lends itself to 2 main values. First, the fact that our support department does do such a good job of maintaining their service level agreements and getting back to customers in a timely fashion. And 2, this is just very, very easy software to use, and I think you'll find that today once we jump into the demo. With KwikTag, we find lots of opportunities for greater efficiency. So I pose the question to everybody out there today, do you have a business process issue disguised as a document problem? And we know that behind every piece of paper in the organization is an actual business process. And increased compliance needs can't support increased business velocity. We've got routing and approval bottlenecks. It takes a long time to route documents through or invoices through an approval process and actually pay our vendors. Compliance and auditability challenges, keeping track of who touched what documents and who did what to them. There's too much time being spent on inquiries, mundane calls from vendors wanting to make sure that we've received their price quote, or that we've received their invoice and the goods, and why haven't we gotten paid yet? And these manual processes just can't keep up. We lose prepaid discounts along the way. We incur late penalties. Customers and vendors become dissatisfied, and audits fail. With regards to GP, we embed into 73 different screens and across the 9 different modules that you see listed here on the left-hand side. Now, I've got a little asterisk down here, and the reason is because we can actually map into any screen or any form that you would possibly be using in GP. Within the 73 screens that we show up in out of the box and across the 9 modules, you'll notice that we show up in an additional tab. So if you don't have KwikTag, you won't have this tab in Great Plains today inside of all of your forms, but after you buy KwikTag, you will. And it's right here that we have the ability within those 73 forms to tag documents to the form that we're on, view documents that have already been tagged, search documents across the entire KwikTag repository, view our work queue, and delete documents from here as well. And not going to bore you with too many slides today. We'll go ahead and jump right into the demo. And I'm going to show you 2 main user experiences today. I'm going to show you the GP user experience and just kind of expand upon that payables transaction entry screenshot that we just looked at, where we map into the additional tab. And it's here inside of GP that we're actually not going to do any workflow yet. I'm just going to get you comfortable with some of the different capture methods that we have, or the ways that we can get documents into the system and associate it to our transactions. And then we'll walk over to what we call our KwikTag web client. That web client can be accessed from any internet browser, and that's where we're actually going to take a further look at workflow today. So I'm going to use the payables transaction entry just as we highlighted on that last slide. And again, keeping in mind that we show up under the additional tab that I have highlighted in blue, you'll notice that I've already keyed in some of my data for this particular transaction. And it's right here under this additional tab when I click tag that I have 3 ways to capture documents. And I can capture documents that are both paper, or I can capture documents that are electronic. When I click on the Tag Documents button, that brings up an electronic barcode label. Okay, and you'll notice right here on the screen we've got a 9-digit number. That 9-digit number is going to actually match a barcode label that you're going to have in a little plastic dispenser on a reel of a paper reel, and it's with these barcode labels that we capture images when as far as paper documents go in order to tag them to our transactions. Okay, so these barcode labels have a lot of value. They act as page separators, so they allow us to scan in batch, and we can also scan whenever it's convenient for us. So I can always scan a document into the system and index it later, or I can create a reservation like I'm about to do in just a second here, where I've already indexed some of my information by filling out the transaction, because we're going to take valuable data from that transaction and correspond it to the actual image once we scan it in. So we also have the ability to scan later whenever it's convenient. These barcode labels are also registered to the user. Okay, so they're the first part of the audit trail. When I first get KwikTag and I get my barcode dispenser, I just take my first label and I type it right here into this screen. I don't have to type the 9-digit number every time. After I've typed it once and I've tagged and I try to tag again, it's automatically going to move up for me in an increment of 1. Okay, so in order to grab the paper documents, all I need to do is leave a comment here if I so choose, and this is a searchable field that has up to 300 characters, so we might want to leave some information here that would be pertinent when we try to retrieve this later. And I click OK. Okay, so it's as easy as that. I would then take the barcode label that matches that 9-digit number. I would put it on the first page of my document. I'd set it in my outbox, and I'd go ahead and save out my transaction and key in my next invoice and repeat. Now again, we've got 2 other ways that we can capture documents from this Tag Documents option, and we can also grab electronic documents. So the last thing that we want you to do is to have to actually take a perfectly good electronic document, maybe it's an invoice that comes in from a vendor via email, and hit the print button and waste that perfectly good electronic document. So by clicking on Tag Documents, I also have the ability to grab electronic documents in 2 ways. I can click on this little file folder here, and that's going to give me browse out capabilities. And I can tag as many documents to a transaction as I would like. I'm going to call this a packing slip, and I'm going to click on my little file folder here, and that's going to give me my browse out capabilities, where I'll go to my desktop or any network drive and grab the electronic document of my choice. Grab our packing slip here and say yes. And we've now tagged that and associated all of the same data, for instance, the document date, the voucher number, the vendor ID, the document number, the purchase amount. So that's all going to get indexed alongside the 2 documents that we have just tagged. Now, thirdly, this is really neat. I can do a drag and drop, and this is one of our 8 patents. I can do a drag and drop from 2 different places. I can either do it from my desktop, or I can do it from Outlook. And you'll notice on the right-hand side, I have both the body of an email, right, and then inside of the email, I also have a PDF attachment. And if I double-click on that, we'll notice that it's an invoice. All I need to do to capture a document from my desktop or from my email is click on it and drag it over the electronic barcode label after we click on the additional tab and say Tag Documents. So I bring up that barcode label, come over here to my inbox, and I just highlight this and hold my cursor down, and then I'm just going to go ahead and drag it over this interface right here and release my cursor. Okay, it asks me if I want to proceed, and I say yes. And now to see those documents, all I need to do is click on the additional tab again and click View. That's going to take us to what we call our KwikTag Unified Client, which is kind of a mini version of our web client. And it's right here that we can see our images that are associated to the transactions. Now you'll notice the third one hasn't shown up yet. I only have 2 in my middle pane. It can take about 15 seconds after we tag a document for it to show up here associated to the transaction. The first document is actually just the reservation, right? We actually haven't scanned the document with the barcode label, so we can't see the image on the right-hand side in the preview pane. Okay, but after we scanned it with the barcode label, we'd be able to. The second document is the packing slip that I browsed out to electronically. Okay, notice I've got a nice clean image, and again, this is just a preview pane. I can expand it, and I can contract it. Just because it's a preview pane doesn't mean that if this were a 500-page telecom bill that I wouldn't be able to scroll down and see the entire document. I would. Okay, but if I want to actually open this document in its native form, maybe I have a beefed up version of Adobe, right, and I want to apply an electronic signature, or I want to mark up the document and then version it back into KwikTag, then I can come into this middle pane here and I can just double click the item, and that's going to bring it open in its native version. Now if we right click and refresh, we should have the email that we dragged and dropped, and we do. So I'll click on that and click open, since I have to bring it open in native form. And there is my email, right, that I dragged and dropped. Notice I also have the PDF attached to it as well. Okay, so with the click of a button and a quick drag and drop, we were able to capture both the body of the email as well as the PDF that was attached to it. And regardless of the way that we capture documents or capture images to our transaction, whether it's paper, whether it's electronic, whether we use a barcode label, drag and drop it, okay, we're always not only going to be able to search based on all of the index data that you'll notice over here on the left-hand side, like the company ID and the voucher number, okay, but we'll always be able to search for all of the characters in the content inside of the document as well. So we're going to perform an optical character recognition process on these documents when we tag them, and that's kind of just fancy for converting an image to text so that we can actually read that image and search for, you know, John Doe or somebody's name that might be deep into a telecom bill or a price quote or something like that. Okay, and again, we can tag to 73 different screens and across the 9 different modules that I showed you earlier. So a lot of different use cases for getting rid of the paper and getting rid of the filing cabinets and any offsite storage costs and dependencies that you might have. But it's also great for something, for instance, like fixed assets, right? I can actually take a picture with my smartphone of my fixed assets, for instance, my scanner that's on my desk, and I can email that to KwikTag and then just drag and drop that and associate it to a fixed asset record. Okay, so we can get pretty creative when it comes to the tagging process. Under the additional tab, I also have a search documents option. This is going to give me KwikTag Global Search, okay? So I'm not just going to search into the images that are associated to this transaction. I'm going to be able to see any document that I have permission to, okay? So permissions and security are, of course, going to be important. We don't want everybody to be able to see every type of document, like sensitive human resources data and things like that. All I need to do is type in a keyword or a string of keyword or Boolean language here. And then I can choose whether I want to limit my search based on the filing information or that index data that we've associated to the images, or whether I want to expand it into the document content, right? Because that's all the characters and the content that we have OCR'd or converted to text. I also have the ability to apply advanced criteria. We can handle as many GP companies as you possibly may have. If you do have multiple GP companies, then you'll probably want to filter by location or site. Okay, so this is where you would filter by your GP company. Each GP company is going to have its own set of electronic drawers. So just like you have filing cabinets today, We're going to keep these documents in different digital drawers on the back end. And notice my drawers are named after the different screens that I might tag to in Great Plains. So my invoices are going to be in my payables transaction entry drawer. And then I can apply date ranges based on when documents were modified, indexed, or scanned. We'll just give this about a 1-month range here and click search. KwikTag will take about 2 or 3 seconds, and it'll bring back your search results based on all the filtering and the criteria that we've applied up top. And once we have our results, we can double-click them to bring open the image, in this case the email, and it has a PDF that's attached to it. Okay, but I also have a neat email functionality here too, so I don't even have to go to Outlook when I'm doing my research and copy and paste or attach files to an email to send out to an auditor or to a vendor or another coworker that might be pertinent. I can literally just select one of these, some of these by multi-selecting, or do all, and click on my email button, and that's going to spin them up into an email as attachments right here within Great Plains, and I can fire them off at my leisure. Okay, so just wanted to point out the global search capabilities real quick. I'm actually going to come back to the work queue, and the reason is that the work queue is where the documents that get routed through an electronic invoice approval process are going to reside, waiting to be bashed after they've gotten the final approval in the organization. Okay, so with that being said, I'm not going to waste any more time, and we're going to get to kind of more of the topic of today's agenda, which is the invoice workflow. And I just want to point out real quick that KwikTag is a flexible solution in that I'm going to show you a couple different types of invoices workflow today, and I'm also going to show you check approval workflow. Okay, but this isn't necessarily just a solution for AP. So we can always create digital drawers for all different types of documents that may or may not even touch the ERP system or be related to Great Plains. And we can also create workflow across any document type, again, remembering that every document type has a business process behind it. This can be accessed from any internet browser, as I mentioned earlier. Notice I'm in Internet Explorer, but I could be using Google Chrome, Mozilla, Safari, doesn't matter, as long as I'm tied into the network. I also have multiple tabs open in Internet Explorer. In the first tab that I have open currently, in the upper right-hand corner, I'm welcomed as the indexer. Okay, so I'm going to make an assumption today that this is like the AP processor or the AP clerk that would be indexing invoices and submitting them out through an approval process. My second tab, I'm welcomed as an approver. My third tab, a department manager, and my fourth tab, a CFO. So we're going to look at a couple of these different user experiences today as we follow a document through the workflow process. And also keep in mind that we've got different levels of automation that you can obtain using KwikTag as well. So what I'm going to show today, just because we're limited on time, is we would have to actually index some of the information. Okay, but also keep in mind that we have a number of ways that we can leverage auto-indexing capabilities. And auto-indexing refers to the ability to be able to grab information from an email or from an invoice or from some type of document and automatically index it so that nobody has to do the data entry. Okay, so that's something that we can talk about, or I can answer questions at the end if you have any. But we'll go ahead and we'll route this through the approval process. Okay, so I'm in my work queue as the indexer. Notice I've got that highlighted up here at the top. And again, I've got a nice preview pane on the right-hand side. The indexing is going to happen on the left-hand side where you see the fields that are highlighted in orange. Anytime I have a field that's highlighted in orange, it's required. And it's going to be required for one of two reasons. Okay, one, if we don't capture the information, the document's not going to know where to go. So we're going to work with you to take your business processes and your approval matrix and however you're routing documents today, whether they're by general ledger account number, or whether they're by a location or a department code, or maybe you just want to have an approver pick list because you've only got 10 approvers in the organization. Maybe you've got 10. we can map the solution to your business processes. Keep in mind I'm in a live demo environment, so I've only got so many ways that I can demo workflow today. But I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to select my site, and then I'm going to choose my document type, and this is where the indexing is going to happen. I'm going to choose invoices, and you'll notice when I do that it breaks down an additional set of fields. Okay, so this is the information that GP is going to require and that we're going to need to know for the document to know where to go in the approval process. I'm going to select my company ID, Fabricam. We'll use my GP test company. I'll just use today's date for the document date, and I can actually come over here to the invoice and just highlight my invoice number and hit Control Copy, and come over here to my document number and hit Control V and copy and paste that. Now I'm actually not going to use this document number or this invoice number because I've used it about 100 times, and you know as well as I do, if you're a GP user, that it will kick it back or reject it if it sees a duplicate. So we're going to go ahead and we're just going to call this Mike and today's date. Okay, I'm going to put my purchase amount, $1,500. And because I've used this vendor before, I can literally just type the first letter or two, and it's going to type ahead the rest for me. Okay, if I haven't used this vendor before, then I've got a magnifying glass, and notice if I hover on it, it says Find a Vendor. Okay, this is another neat example of our deep integration into Great Plains. This is actually going to give you a lookup into all of the vendor cards that you have set up inside of GP. So I can filter based on ID, name, city, or state. Notice Advanced Office Systems is right here on the top, but if I'm looking for International Telecom, I type a couple of letters. Office Systems, and then I'm going to select my GL distributions. And again, AP may not do the GL coding in your company. Maybe you have the managers take a first stab at it. That's fine. We can set it up that way. That's not how it is in my demo environment, but that'll be just fine. Okay, so in order to do my GL coding, I've got another magnifying glass, and if I click on that, that's going to give me the ability to see any vendor default GL distributions that are set up in the Advanced Office Systems vendor card. Okay, so if you leverage vendor defaults, that's what's going to show when you first click on the magnifying glass, and if that's all you need to use, great, you can hit Submit and move on. If you'd like to delete the vendor defaults out, you're more than welcome to do that. If you want to add additional coding, we're not going to limit you to the amount of lines or cost centers that you want to spread this out to. Okay, you can add as many GL distributions as you'd like. You can do it in two ways. You can do it by clicking on Add Blank, which is going to give us the ability to do it manually for those who are very familiar with the coding. And if you're not familiar with the coding, we're going to give you another lookup into GP. If we click on View All, that's going to give a lookup into the chart of accounts. I can filter based on my account number or my description. So if this were an invoice for computer equipment, I could type a couple of letters, hit my Submit button, add my debit and credit, and go ahead and move on. Okay, we're not going to let anybody leave this screen, however, until the functioning totals at the bottom match up. We can short pay the vendor and only have $750, even though that we know this is a $1,500 invoice. That's fine, but the two functioning totals at the bottom have to match up. Okay, I'm going to click Submit now, and this is my opportunity to go ahead and leave any comments that I want for the manager. For instance, invoice is subject to an early pay discount. Of course, that never happens, right? Please approve ASAP. I click Submit, and I can move on to my next invoice. Okay, so it's as easy as that. These documents could have made it in here in a multitude of different ways. They could have been scanned in, faxed in, emailed in. So you could give your vendor an email address like apinvoices.com, right? If they use that email address and submit an electronic invoice as a PDF or whatever, however they might submit it, okay, we can tie that to the work queue so that it shows up ready for indexing. Alternatively, we can leverage web forms, right? So again, there's a lot of different ways that we can get documents and data into the system. We've got an upload tab here for electronic documents. And if I choose a drawer that I want to upload to, notice I've got another magnifying glass. If I click on it, that's going to give me my browse out capabilities and would send the document to my work queue if I choose my invoices as document type. And I also have the ability to drag and drop over this magnifying glass, just like I showed you over in Great Plains. So we're not going to limit the users that are non-GP users who are kind of living and breathing in this web client on functionality. They're going to have all the same functionality and actually even more than the folks that are just living and breathing inside of Great Plains under the additional tab. Now, I don't know if you heard that little ding and saw that email pop up in the bottom right-hand corner. That was actually an email notification that went to our approver, letting them know that there was something in their work queue waiting for action. So if I click over to my next tab now, and I'm just going to show a one-tier approval process today. We're going to kind of keep it simple just to get the point across. But if I move over to my approver tab and I right-click and refresh, we will have the latest invoice that we just indexed. And notice on the bottom here we've got all of the index data. So all of the information that I, as the approver, need to have in front of me in order to determine whether I want to approve this or not is right here. I've got the image on the right, the index data on the left. I can see that there were two codes selected. I can right-click and say Show GL Distributions to expose that GL coding so I can verify that that's been done accurately. And then I can leave comments and approve, reject, or delegate. If I try to reject this without leaving those words, they're going to force them on you. So you'll get this little window that pops up forcing rejection comments. Okay, if I don't want to work on this, I can click on the orange button, and then I can choose any other KwikTag user that has the authorization to approve this invoice, leave comments for them, click my orange button again. That's going to move it from my work queue to theirs, and they're going to receive the same email notification that I initially received. Okay, before I approve this from here, I'm going to pull up that email notification, and we'll just double click it. And notice that the approver has all of the information that they need to know also in the form of an email in order to determine whether they want to approve and reject this. All of the data that was indexed earlier in the process is right here in the body of the email. If I double click on the attachment, you'll notice that's a PDF copy of the invoice, so I'll always have that attached. And then I have approve and reject links at the bottom of my email. These approve and reject links are going to work great if all of your users are using KwikTag inside of the firewall. Okay? As soon as we extend this out to people who are traveling on business or PTO and are leveraging email across their smartphones or their tablets, the links aren't going to work. We're going to have a different set of instructions under action required. It's going to say to approve this invoice, please reply to this email and type the keyword approve. Okay, so it's just as easy. Well, you get the idea. Trying to type something and say something at the same time. If it's a rejection, then you're going to have a set of instructions that tell you to please type the word reject and make sure to leave rejection comments, right? Coded improperly or something like that. If you try to reject an invoice from email by using the reject keyword and hit send, it's actually going to send you an email back if you forget the rejection comments, and it's going to make you do it again. So we've got another control in there so that we're never leaving that first person hanging who that's going to be rejected back to. KwikTag is going to monitor an email box, and when it receives the emails on a 2-minute polling service or a 2-minute interval, it's going to ingest them, it's going to parse out the keyword, and it's going to move it forward or backward in the process. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the web client, and we're going to go ahead and approve that invoice. And we'll just say approved and click on our green button. And because I'm just doing a one-tier approval process, that's actually now the final approval, and it's going to end up over in GP, and it's going to be waiting to be batched. So I'm going to open up Great Plains again, and I'm going to show you the work queue that I told you that we would come back to earlier under the additional tab. I'm going to save out the transaction that we were tagging to earlier when we were just doing capture here inside of Great Plains. And after clicking additional in view work queue, you'll notice that I have a bunch of documents that are sitting here in this little bottom bin. So this is where all of my approved invoices are going to go. We don't have to send them here. We can actually just go ahead and auto create a voucher after the final approval and not have you have the option to batch these accordingly, but rather go into just a delegated batch all the time. However, if you'd like them to stop here, we'll configure it that way, and this gives us the ability to see all the key information regarding the invoices. Notice if I just hover my cursor over the invoices, I expose all of the data. I can see the GL codes. I can see the workflow comments. I've got my vendor ID, right? All the information I need to know to determine how I want to batch this is right here. I can also double click, and that's going to bring up the actual copy of the invoice as well. Okay, I can grab all of these together, or I can just grab one of them, right, and batch it separately, or I can put them all into the same batch. Let's go ahead and refresh and see if we've got the invoice that we just routed. Oh, we do. Okay, so it's the one with Mike, my name, and today's date and the document number. I'm going to go ahead now, and I'm just going to batch this one by itself, and I'm going to do that by clicking on Create. Okay, I can either tag it to an existing batch or I can create a new one. I'm just going to go ahead and tag it to an existing batch that I have titled Mike. I'm going to click Yes. And notice that invoice has left my work queue. I can now batch the next one and move on. Okay, so I've actually now created a voucher. So what we've done is we've taken a document that was scanned or emailed in. We've keyed in some of the data as the AP person or indexed the data. We've routed it through an approval process, and again, it doesn't matter how complex your processes are or how many approval tiers you have. We've carried the index information and the image along the ride, and that's going to now show up inside of a voucher, and we're going to have an audit trail for that. Okay, so if I go to click on, if I click on my voucher number to search for voucher numbers, I'm going to search by my batch ID. And I'm just going to scroll down. The last 3 digits of that voucher number were 740. Notice I've got a lot of invoices in here. There it is. I'm going to double click it, and there's my voucher. Okay, so that's workflow for you. We've got the workflow comments sitting in the description field. Okay, we can push really any index field to that description field if you don't want those there, or if you use that for some other type of data. We've got the vendor ID, the document date, the document number, the purchase amount. If I click on my GL distributions, notice the vendor default GLs that I submitted earlier have made their way over to this voucher as well. And if I click on the additional tab and say View Documents, that's going to spin up our KwikTag Unified Client, and I can go ahead and see my image right from there. Okay, notice I've got all of the index data, the comments here, right, are all part of the audit trail. And I can right-click and actually see the workflow history. This is going to show me all of the time and date stamps of who did what and at what time and date and any comments they left along the way. Okay, this is a great thing for auditors. They love this. Feel free to give them a license key and just have them go into your payables transaction entry drawer where they list out all of the invoices in this form. They can right-click, show the workflow history, or see any documents that are associated, and hopefully you can get them in and out of your office a little bit earlier than you're used to. Okay, so again, that's just a one-tier, simple AP invoice approval process. We can also handle purchase order workflow in the event that you're doing POs. We don't have time to show that today. But I am going to show you another concept, and this is one of the methods of auto-indexing that we have, and this is really neat. Keeping in mind that auto-indexing refers to the ability to grab data from someplace so that you don't actually have to enter it. We have created a vendor portal, and this is something that can be purchased by our customers, and we can point this to KwikTag. Okay, so I'm going to log in as Mike@beaumont.com, And Beaumont is actually my vendor in GP. So Beaumont Construction, KwikTag is already going to know, based on your vendor's login here, that Beaumont is the vendor, and that's already one piece of information that you don't have to index because KwikTag already knows. Okay, so I'm going to log in. And you'll notice inside of this vendor portal, I have the ability to self-serve in a couple of different ways. I can submit a new invoice, and I can also see all of the existing invoices that I have already submitted to this particular company that I do business with. In real time, the status is going to change as it goes through the approval process at the company site to reflect either approved, pending approval, check cut, or what have you, depending on the different levels of approval that you have. Okay, so we can now not waste as much time with our vendors because they can self-serve and they don't need to call in with their inquiries anymore. If I click Submit New Invoice and go ahead and I'm just going to type in an invoice number. We'll call this one Tim 10/29/2013. I'm going to choose today's date. We'll use the same invoice. I'll use the amount $1,500. I'll say, here you go. And I'm going to grab an electronic document and submit that. So notice that one has already hit the little self-serve matrix here, so I can see the latest invoice and the status of it. And the idea here is that that is actually going to bypass the indexer's work queue that we were working in earlier, where we were indexing invoices. Because your vendor was just kind enough to type that information into the vendor portal, and it makes sense for them to do that because they're going to save money on stamps and paper and having to hit the print button and call you with their inquiries. Okay, because they were kind enough to key in that data, going to bypass the indexer. KwikTag is going to grab it, and it's going to automatically route to the approver. We will grab the vendor default GL distributions that are associated to Beaumont Construction, and then you would have the ability as the approver to edit the GL coding if that's how you wanted to configure it, or AP could configure it once it made it back over to GP after the final approval process. Okay, but if I right-click here and refresh, we probably should have that invoice by now. No, not quite yet. Again, there's always a 2-minute polling service or interval that KwikTag runs in the background, so it can take anywhere from 1 second to 2 minutes to move a document from one person to the next after you submit it or approve it or whatever you do to it. But it should show up here in just a second. No, not quite yet. Well, we'll give it a minute. While we're waiting for that, I just want to point out a couple of things. We've got global search capabilities, just like we did in GP. We have those right here in the web client, so I can click on the search tab up top, and then on the left-hand side, I can run the same search, type a keyword or a string of keywords, choose advanced search criteria, and again, choose whether I want to limit my search based on the index data or expand it into all of the characters and the content, filter into GP company, right? Look into my particular drawers and bring up all of my documents right here. I also can filter for documents in the drawer themselves. So if I go to my library, notice I've got a lost and found drawer. That's where documents go where you forget to actually put a barcode label on them. And then if I click on all doc types and choose my GP test company, I can come into my payables transaction entry drawer, and here I have all of my invoices. I can sort based on these columns. I can move these columns over, right? And then I can filter right here in this little field. And here's actually the invoice that we did earlier. And notice, again, I've got the ability to see my workflow history from here too. So anywhere I find the document, whether it's global search, drilling into it from the transaction, or going into the drawer and filtering for it, I can always see the workflow history. Now, my invoice actually came through. I saw the email notification in the bottom right-hand corner. And so notice, on the bottom, we've got today's date. This is the invoice that was just submitted from the portal, and we automatically had all of the information indexed so that the indexer or the AP person didn't have to enter anything. It automatically hit the workflow process and went to my first approval tier. Okay, so I'm not going to actually approve that one because you've already kind of seen that today, but hopefully you get the idea. That's one of the ways that we can leverage the concept of auto-indexing and help reduce the manual data entry of the keying and the keying of the invoices in your organization. Now, I know we've only got a couple of minutes left here if we're going to have any questions and answers, so I just want to show you payment approval or check approval real quick. I'm in my, notice in the upper right-hand corner, I'm logged in as my CFO. And my CFO has lots of different document types in here because we can do lots of different types of workflow. Okay, but I've got 6 checks here, and you'll notice if I select one of my checks on the right-hand side, I can see a portion of a computer checks edit list or a batch report that was printed out of GP. On the left-hand side, I can see that this is going to pay Advanced Office Systems $336.34 and across 3 vouchers. Okay, so what we've done here is we can set up the system to where if you can save the computer checks edit list every time you batch your invoices and get them ready for payment processing, when you would save that to a file share, KwikTag would monitor that file share, ingest the text report, parse it, and that's why I only have the specific portion of the report that is specific to the vendor that I'm paying. Okay, so I can see the information on the right-hand side that this is paying $336 across 3 vouchers. I can also right-click my check and show the associations in order to see all of my invoices that are associated to this particular check. So no longer do we need to keep an open file, an open invoices file for, the open batch that we have where we collect all of the supporting documentation, print the checks, staple the supporting documentation to the back of the check, put it in a big basket, and then bring it up to the CFO's desk so that he can stare and compare and look for any red flags, or she can look for any new vendors or whatever you're doing during that review process. Okay, we can now kind of keep in the theme of going digital and do this all electronically. So here's the information about the particular invoices, and then I can right-click, and I can see the document that's associated to each of those invoices. And I can also right-click and show my workflow history and make sure that this has gone through the appropriate approval chain. After I'm comfortable that this check or batch, because we can configure it to be processed either way, after I'm comfortable that this check or batch can be approved, I just click on my green button, and that's going to send an email notification to AP letting them know to go ahead and print the checks if you're doing a pre-print check approval process, or to go ahead and pay the vendor if you're doing a post-print process. Okay, so just one additional type of workflow that's kind of AP related, so I thought there'd be some value in showing that today. That being said, Tim, I think we're about 10 minutes from the top of the hour. And so I'm going to halt here, and I appreciate everybody's time today. And Tim, thanks a ton for having me and for having ImageTag and letting us show your customers the solution, and hopefully they got value out of it.